The Chargers want to reimagine how their front office operates. So let's put on our thinking caps and join them. LAFC has finally decided to make moves with the regular season rapidly approaching, and Atlanta continues to ravage the Rams coaching staff. Good morning. I'm James. This is your daily dose of sports and snark for the greatest sports city in the world, Los Angeles. This is the faithful Angelenos morning report, and it is January 30th, 2024. Absolutely glorious morning. I can't wait to go outside and enjoy it, but before we do, let's talk a little LA sports. And if you like being in the know about LA, click-clack the like button. Click-clack the subscribe button. There's a notification bell, hit that. It'll let you know when we drop new content. Sharing is caring. Let people know we exist. And by all means, comment. You know I look forward to hearing from you. Now, before we go through the news and notes, a look at the scoreboard. This is why I was telling you guys to be skeptical when the press was claiming that the Lakers' victory in Golden State would be a turning point in the season. Because they went out and they got their ass kicked in Houston last night, 135 to 119. They allowed 135 points. Now, D'Angelo Russell led the Lakers with 23. And by the way, just yesterday we were talking about how important Jared Vanderbilt is to the Lakers' fortunes, but the dude gets ejected for shoving Dylan Brooks. The Lakers are supporting Vanderbilt, by the way. They're all claiming to have his back, but really, how stupid is that? You knew, everybody knows, Dylan Brooks likes to target Laker players. Because, of course, losing to LA in last year's playoffs pretty much banished him from Memphis. Jared Vanderbilt needed to use his damn head, and he didn't. Meanwhile, the Clippers also lost to Cleveland, 118 to 108. Kawhi Leonard scored 30 points in the loss. The Lakers are back in action today. They're in Atlanta at 4:30. But let's get to the news. The reimagine Chargers are starting to look a little less blurry, and by the looks of things, it's pretty much going to be a front office filled of everybody Jim Harbaugh's ever met. Depending on which news source you believe, the Chargers have hired Joe Ortiz as general manager. They hired him away from Baltimore. Other outlets saying that the hiring process has not been completed yet. But let's assume that the Chargers are feverishly working to make it happen. And if it does, well, they're basically pulling a guy who won 2 Super Bowls working for the Ravens for 25 years. And of course, obviously, not only does he know Jim Harbaugh, he knows Baltimore head coach John Harbaugh. So let's assume for the moment that it is going to be Ortiz as the general manager. The next obvious step for the Chargers is twofold. Harbaugh goes and he starts putting together his coaching staff, but the more important one would be for Ortiz to put in a plan of action for next year's roster. And the reason that that's more important is we have heard all kinds of estimates as to how far the Bolts actually are over the salary cap. ESPN has been extremely generous. They have said the Chargers are only about 27, 28 million over the cap. Overthecap.com, which is a source that many media outlets use, have projected it at 45.8 million in the red. And that doesn't even include the extra space that the team would have to create. You see, you don't just meet the cap on zero. You actually have to show to the NFL that you've created enough cap space to sign your draft picks. Putting that in, you're putting it at way over 50 million in the hole, somewhere around 53 million in the red. The reason that the number is varying from Over the Cap to The Athletic to ESPN is because at this moment, everybody is guesstimating what next year's salary cap is going to be. Now, what the Bolts actually are going to do is anyone's guess, because Harbaugh is pretty much running the show, and he's never had this much leverage in the NFL. For example, if I tell you what the Chargers typically would have done before Harbaugh, you could take that and throw it all out the window. We don't know yet. One example, for instance, and we're going to use the worst case scenario. We're going to use the over the cap projection of about 53 million over the cap. One option would just be to throw up your hands, rip the roster to shreds, and start mostly from scratch like the Rams did last year. You're not getting rid of Justin Herbert, but you would say get rid of a lot of other more valuable players as well. Now, in previous years, pre-Harbaugh, the Chargers would never go for that option, right? But in a new reimagined regime, if you wanted to go with the burn it down approach, you would get rid of, and this is going to hurt, pass rushers Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa. And then you would turn around and you would get rid of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. You could get under the cap by getting rid of them like that. You would take on a lot of dead money against the salary cap, but those 4 players alone account for more than 58% of the anticipated salary cap. And you would be able to keep Justin Herbert. But you do that, you have next to no pass rush. And you absolutely have no receiving core. What are you going to do? Just sit there and trust second-year player Quentin Johnston as your number 1? The dude was playing last year like he had oven mitts for hands, for Pete's sake. Now, you could also trade those players, right? Instead of just outright cutting them. But how much do you get back? You could get some things that are useful, but the only player of those 4 that I mentioned, Mack, Bosa, Williams, and Allen, the only one who's still in his 20s is Bosa, and he's injury prone. Mack, for example, will be 33. How many years does he really have? And therefore, how much trade value? Now, one reason that trades might help is if you consider, say, center Corey Linsley. When he wound up with that heart issue last season, the entire offensive line fell completely apart. Couldn't you, in theory, trade Bosa for, say, a 3rd-round pick? Then you either do one of 2 things. You could either spend that pick on an offensive lineman or use that salary cap savings to go out and get yourself the best center you possibly can. And theoretically, instead of rebuilding your offensive line, you say, you know what, we just needed a quality center to call blocking schemes. You could do that. You could also theoretically use that pick to try to replace Joey Bosa, even though you wouldn't necessarily get Joey Bosa, but you could get somebody decent to line up opposite of, say, Tui Tuipulotu. That's an option. Is it a great option? I don't know. But that would be the equivalent of ripping everything apart. Option number 2 would be to reduce the immediate cap hit by restructuring everybody's contracts. But for the player to do that, there has to be something for them. In other words, they'll take salary and they'll make it a signing bonus and also extend the contract for years. Now, do you really want to do that? Because you're in essence kicking the can down the road. How many years do you give Khalil Mack on a reimagined contract when he's going to be 33? Now, the most likely option, and you guys are intelligent, you're figuring this out as I'm talking, somewhere in the middle of those 2 extremes. I want to give you an example, but this is just a guess. This is not a prediction. I am obviously not in the inner sanctum of the Chargers. But what you could do, you save money when Linsley retires due to his heart issue. Sucks, but you got to replace him. Then you wind up, say, cutting Mike Williams. You cut linebacker Eric Kendricks. You could extend Keenan Allen. Remember, Allen was saying he wants to basically retire a Charger. If he has to go somewhere else, he would strongly consider retiring, which makes his trade value that much lower. You extend Keenan Allen because he is your best receiver. Maybe you trade Bosa, like we were talking about a moment ago, and you just say to hell with it and you keep Khalil Mack. One person you could definitely see leaving the Chargers, though, would be Austin Eckler. ESPN has generated a list of who they think are the top 50 free agents in the NFL. Eckler is the only Chargers player on that list, and he's number 49. Hardly somebody that you would break the bank over when you're that far over the cap, wouldn't you say? And as a side note, Slow clap for Austin Eckler, thinking he's way more valuable than what he actually is. We've been saying this all year long. The guy wanted to get paid like he was one of the game's all-time greats. He's not, and he will not get paid as such. That sense of entitlement, man, I'm telling you, just drove me nuts all year long. But that's another story for another time. Social media, well, it didn't exactly blow up. More likely it broke wind. But social media broke wind when LAFC posted a clip. You see, when the black and gold decide to add a player, what they do is they tease the fans. They put up a little clip of somebody putting an LAFC cap in a box and sending it off in the mail. And then it gets followed up by a second clip where the player puts on the cap and it's a slow reveal, right? Very dramatic, but whatever, I get it. It builds excitement. The clip LAFC posted yesterday is of just some random dude, maybe a janitor, who knows, grabbing 3 LAFC caps, putting it in a box. Now, we are all pretty confident where one of the caps went, just one, because ESPN has reported that midfielder Eduard Atuesta, very single name, I must say, is coming back to LAFC from a Brazilian club. It's going to be on a loan with an option to add Atuesta permanently to the club. Now, he is returning to LAFC. He played for the Black and Gold for 4 years, and he was pretty damn good, I must say. He was named to the MLS Best 11 back in 2019. So this would be a very solid addition. But here is the thing to keep in mind. Maybe the other 2 names that we don't know yet, maybe they are amazing. Rumors are flying all around. But you have to keep in mind that after you bring back this one player, LAFC still has 15 holes on the roster. For all we know, the other 2 caps are going to guys who are going to be reserves. We don't know yet. John Thorrington got rid of a lot of players. There is a lot of work to do to rebuild that roster. The Rams lose yet another member of the coaching staff to the Atlanta Falcons. Remember, the Falcons, they hired Rams defensive coordinator Raheem Morris to be the head coach. Jimmy Lake will be the Falcons' new defensive coordinator. He will be joining, in addition to Morris. Morris had already poached Zach Robinson from the Rams to be the offensive coordinator. Lake, by the way, was once the head coach of the University of Washington. He had previously worked with Morris in Tampa Bay. Now, Lake's background, he's best known for his work with defensive backs. Have you heard of Budda Baker? He's been an all-pro with Arizona. Lake coached him up at the University of Washington. We mentioned a moment ago how ESPN released a list of the top 50 free agents in the NFL. They rank offensive lineman Kevin Dotson as 24th. Now, how they figure out the numbers I'm about to tell you, I have no bleeping clue. But Dotson finished the year with a 92% pass block win rate and a 74% run block win rate. Consider this. The fact that Dotson is the only free agent on that list from the Rams makes the Rams season an even bigger win. Because if you think about it, everybody that they want to keep is already under contract, and the Rams are about 40 some odd million under the cap. That's a success story. Meanwhile, the Rams have figured out that at some point they might want to get on the coaching hiring party. They have asked the Cowboys for permission to talk with defensive line coach Aiden Durda. The whole process started to feel a little incestuous, though, I gotta tell you. Like I mentioned earlier about how the Falcons are just pulling players from the Rams coaching staff. The Rams are finding guys with ties to the Atlanta Falcons, and it's almost kind of circular, a little creepy. Remember, Morris, who is now the Falcons head coach, came to the Rams from Atlanta. Durda coached in Atlanta as well, so it's all very strange. I am starting to wonder if the previously celebrated Dodgers minor league system needs to be replenished. A couple of days ago, we did talk about it on this channel. MLB.com listed a list of the top 100 minor leaguers, and the Dodgers only had 2, right? Yesterday, Jim Bowden, a former Major League general manager who now writes for The Athletic, he put together a list of the 40 prospects that he cannot wait to see and scout. Not a single Dodger minor leaguer on the list. Not one. By the way, we were talking about updating the Idiot Scribe rumor board while I was out in St. Louis for the weekend. We do have an update. There will not be a reunion with Justin Turner and the Dodgers. He signed with the Toronto Blue Jays, so he is off the Idiot Scribe rumor board. The idiots who run sports journalism, they gave us 42 names that they thought were destined to wear Dodger blue. They have only hit on 6. They have missed on 17. There are 19 names left. So time's a wasting, scribes. Get your predictions in. Just try to make them a little more based in reality. What do you say? Paul George has been playing for the Clippers since he aggravated his groin against Brooklyn on January 21st. He just hasn't been playing that well. He scored 13 points, for example, in the previously mentioned loss to Cleveland. Since aggravating his groin on the 21st, he's averaged only 16 points per game. Now, Ty Lue gave an update on George, which is good because we at Faithful Angelenos adhere to a strict "we do not study men's groins" policy. According to Lue, quote, "He's doing okay, just pushing through playing the way he has. We need everybody we can get because he's still dangerous on the floor. Just monitoring to see how he feels, making sure that he stays on his restriction," unquote. And that last word is key, restriction. If Paul George is on restriction to try to regain his groin, maybe just don't play him, at least for a couple of days. Consider this. The Clippers are about to face Washington and Detroit, 2 of the bottom feeders in the NBA. Why risk it? Let them kick it. See what you get after 3 or 4 days just riding the bench. It's not the end of the world. Former Lakers guard Rajon Rondo was arrested in Atlanta for unlawful possession of a firearm, drug paraphernalia, and marijuana possession. Now look, they're all misdemeanor charges, so honestly, not that big of a deal. It's not like the dude went Heisenberg on society. Even though you could imagine somebody going Heisenberg on society when you live in a nasty ass state like Indiana, but I digress. Rondo played 16 seasons in the NBA. He also won a title with the Lakers during the COVID-shortened season. But you let me know what you think in the comments thread. Talk to me, for example, about what you would do with the Chargers roster. Talk to me about who you think is coming to LAFC. And if you enjoyed the content, don't forget to subscribe to Faithful Angelenos. We talk LA sports every single day here. Thank you for watching. I'm James. We'll be back tomorrow. Faithful Angelenos is a Kian Corte El Queso production. Take care.